Welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast, your weekly look inside the world of fly fishing presented by Pete Tigers. If you're enjoying listening, please consider subscribing.
David Miller's paintings of fish are instantly recognisable. If you own a rod licence, it will be his artwork that you'll see on it. His work has also been commissioned by the Royal Mail for a set of 10 stamps. Today, I talk with him about his life as an artist and how fish have been an important part of it. David, it's great to have you along on the Fly Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, looking forward. This is a really exciting time of year for me as the rivers start to drop to a nice level. The migratory fish start to arrive. The bass are already here in Pembrokeshire. I'm hearing good reports. So lots to look forward to. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was actually out after salmon the other day and I found some mullet as well. So didn't catch any, but I had a very, very quick go at them. But it was fun to see those sort of knocking around as well. So they're something that's, again, back on the menu for me for this season. But I was thinking the last time I saw you was probably at Toby's Bristol show, which is a few years back now, isn't it?
Yeah, the way of these things, difficult to guess. What, 4 years, would you say? 5 years?
Yeah. I think something along those sorts of lines. And it was, I think it must be now. But time seems to have flown. And obviously with the lockdowns and everything else, we sort of disregard a couple of years and have to add 2 on to whatever we think that it was. But it seems as though...
It's strange, isn't it? It's all been very strange.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, I know we've just, I said at the beginning of the year, we've had BFFI, and I hope that at some stage that we do start to see a few more shows starting to pick up again. It's just such a lovely way to catch up with people, isn't it?
It is, yeah. To meet people face to face. Sometimes you've got a relationship, especially these days, you've got a virtual relationship with a lot of people, Facebook friends, and you can feel quite close to people, but then it's not the same as meeting them face to face. And certainly with the artwork, probably like, with a lot of things, even, someone who's tying flies, there's nothing quite like seeing the real thing, in the flesh. Original oils especially. However well you photograph them, however well they reproduce, there's something else going on entirely once you've got the original there. But I'm getting to be a real homebod. Really enjoying. I hardly leave Pembrokeshire these days. Just sort of nip into Carmarthen for the salmon and sea trout. But I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying. Probably like a lot of us when we're younger, done a lot of racing around. You seem to be chasing something. You seem to be always on a mission. So it's nice that's calmed down a little bit. I've got a city sort of friend. He works in the city, very busy man. When he last came down here, he literally took a picture of our wall planner because there were 2 things for the whole year. He said, "That's a joke, isn't it?" I said, "No, that's it." I can't remember what it was planned, but... this year we haven't even bought a wall planner, so but I'm enjoying that. All that's on. If there was a wall planner, it would basically be go diving, sort of from now to October, with a bit of fishing thrown in. Yeah,
it's a fascinating point that you make about, and I remember, I think it was a mackerel painting that you had at the show, if I remember rightly, which was incredibly vivid and the perfect thing to have on your stand. And I was kind of thinking about that coming into this conversation. I was recently lucky enough to be at the National Gallery and I looked at a Constable painting, which was called The Cenotaph in the Memory of Joshua Reynolds. And I just looked at it online before we spoke, funnily enough. And I was thinking about, like I say, the conversation. It was one of the most striking paintings I've ever seen, I think. And I know his obvious work, the Haywain and everything else. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I looked at it online and it was still beautiful, but not quite in the same way. But like you say, I guess, and, I said that our conversation go off in lots of directions, and I guess you kind of nicely segued us there, that, being able to, not having the shows, but being able to reach a large audience via social media and with I think of things like Instagram with, if I'm thinking of that mackerel picture or anything else, your ability to reach people show people your medium in a much wider vein must have been amazing for you, mustn't it?
It has. It has been life changing from a couple of perspectives. The first one is financial, because my wife, you probably know, my wife Lisa's an artist, and we really have played the role of the starving artist. We've especially with my work, as I've developed a reputation for years. Not a matter of not selling work, always sold most of what I've done. But making a profit, we never seem to get anywhere. And part of that, you touched earlier on whether I needed galleries. I had some great relationships with galleries, and really good friends who run galleries. But when you were giving up to 50%, some of the London galleries even past 50%, we never were able to save. We were renting, and then once Facebook started, it wasn't a coincidence. And over a period of time, it went from selling everything in galleries virtually to now selling nothing. I can't remember the last gallery sale I had. And that, the customers coming directly to us was basically enough for us to save. So we got a mortgage at 50. And that is basically, it's a Facebook, less so Instagram. I've started to make strides on Instagram, but I came late to that, so I found it hard. But Facebook, I said earlier when we were setting this up, on the peak of the first lockdown, we reached well over 300,000 people on Facebook. But the second thing that social media has done, like all artists, I'm a sensitive soul. I think it goes with the territory, and periods of self-doubt, periods of artistic block. And I know I'm not foolish enough to think that I'm surrounded by, I've got 300,000 art critics looking at my work. But what I do get is a heartfelt response. So in periods before, if you were showing in the autumn, let's say, and you were painting from the new year, and nobody was seeing your work, you were working at home in isolation, you weren't getting any feedback, you could become almost crippled by self-doubt. But when you post something on Facebook, as I do almost every day, and then you do get considered opinions, not just people saying that's nice, people who are clearly informed and discerning sort of opinions about the art. It's really good for the morale as well. So it's just been will. And then another side, I've said two things. A third thing, when you're working in isolation, you might think that what you're doing is really good and that you're at the top of the game. And then you might go to a mixed show and you see somebody who's wiped the floor with you because you just haven't pitched it where it needs to be. But because, again, of social media, everybody else is queuing up to show their work. So it really keeps you on your toes. You can see some work. There's a Spanish painter, Miguel, I can't remember his surname. He's an absolute maestro. He's a modern master. He paints like Velázquez. And you just need to look at that to realise that there's a whole other level. So in all sorts of ways, it has been life-changing, definitely.
And that's interesting you say about, because, very often on here, social media is a double-edged sword, and it's really, really nice to hear how that's worked. I guess, from an artistic point of view, when you said you would go to shows and you would see other artists, how would you deal with that if you felt, would that be a source of inspiration for you to, as you almost said, sort of upping the game and step back from your work a little bit and then look in? How do you deal with that? Because it must be a difficult thing if you go to a show and feel that your work for this one that you've not pitched right. How do you deal with that? Do you take that as a positive to drive you forward onwards again?
Absolutely, especially. I mean, I'm mid 50s now, and I do have, thankfully, I ought to have now a lot more emotional maturity. But as a younger man, it could be it could feel initially sort of soul destroying, but then you learn. You would always come away then licking your wounds. Really, there's nowhere to hide. If you are, pending a similar subject, and then you've got a private view where people are queuing up to look at the pictures, and there's a dozen people crowding around the neighbour's version of what you've done. There's nowhere to hide. But as you're saying, what you would then do is come away, analyse, what is missing in your work, because I think, after 30 years in it, probably like with anything, if you're a writer, if you're an angler, whatever it is that you do, keeping the genuine motivation and really doing it like you mean it, it is difficult, but it's not for me. Art shouldn't be like competitive in any sense that you're trying to beat another artist. It's more a case of like at the moment, I'm absolutely bewitched and enchanted by the ocean. The bass, the mackerel, the Pembrokeshire reefs, the places I dive. So the motivation isn't to beat anyone else. It's to do justice to your own engagement with the natural world. And also as an artist, you should really, again, it's a sign of maturity. You should love what other artists are contributing. That's the only the only same way forward. And as you've said, use it as inspiration, and try, because I think if you're not trying to up your game, I don't think you'll plateau. I think you'll actually go downhill quite easily, which a lot of artists do. And I'm at the age now where an awful lot of artists I've known and loved, they're doing work from my age into the 60s, which is a pale shadow. They become almost like a pastiche of what they did as a younger artist. They've got a formula. Here's a trout, here's a bit of chalk stream. And it's really hard to avoid that. It is really hard. I know it's not coal mining. You sat in a comfortable studio, but that side of it of trying to keep a very real connection, that which initially motivated you, and not to somehow, if you like, be making widgets. You're making another Miller widget. It is difficult. It's because it's an intellectual art as much as it is a craft. Definitely.
And as an artist, then, does that mean that you're 30 plus years into your career? Is there times that you're sort of thinking, actually, I'd like to express myself differently? And do you do that sort of privately, or don't you do it, or do you step away from it? How do you do that? Like you say, to leave that widget on a conveyor belt type scenario? What allows you to go out and do that? Would it be a different medium? Would it be a different form of painting? Would it be how would you go about doing that?
Well, I'm driven almost to distraction. I mean, part of the story, and again, I shouldn't really sound like as if I'm attacking the artists who are making widgets, because we have mortgages to pay. And we all become sort of circumscribed by our own limitations, which have been created by patterns of thinking and the way that you do things. So you have to, I have to anyway, I have to keep earning money. So I have to do what I've done, and I've got lots of commissions, and you have to give them the love. You have to really give them the love. People are paying hard-earned cash. But it's something we discuss on an almost weekly basis. I'm looking at the moment, I've just had an epiphany, never done it before, which is 1 week of doing that which needs doing, because you can end up, there's a wonderful northern expression, you don't know whether you need a shave or a haircut. And if you spread yourself too thinly, so you think, today I might look at doing some lino cuts, because that's a different way of expressing. I might do some line work, or I might do something more expressionistic, or I might try watercolour. But then you've got the commission looming over you, or the latest sort of Miller. So I'm looking at a period I had last week on commissions. I will be taking this week off, spend some time with the family. But then next week, I'm trying to think, right, you can do whatever you want. No excuses. This is a week, because part of what's exercising me at the moment, it's how to express some of the aspects which you'll be very familiar with. And I don't know, again, I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm asking questions. It's the conservation side of things, because, you know, if you, wherever you look, certainly if you look at the state of our rivers, the issues with sewage, the dramatic decline in the salmon and sea trout stocks. I mean, you know the story. I'm preaching to the converted. Probably most people listening to this know the story. I'd like to make a comment on that somewhere, but then other people have said, I've discussed it with friends. What you do already, which is saying, look at this beautiful world, you're doing, you know, you're making a statement by saying how beautiful it is. But like I say, I don't have any answers yet, because it would be a process of inquiry. But there's that side of it, the conservation side, but there's also with the salmon and sea trout and the rivers. I don't know whether you know rivers like the Cothie and the Souther and the Gwilly. These are places of real magic and wonder, almost sacred. That's a word I think I would use. They look untouched. You know, whatever's going on, there are issues with the stocks in all those rivers. They all feed the Tarry. There's some sense of magic and mystery that the sea trout and the salmon are at the heart of this ancient story that goes back millennia. And then when you're in these rivers, the power of eons of the river carving the rock. You probably think of Henry Moore's sculpture, for example. So I feel that what I'm doing is sort of scratching the surface somehow, and I'd like to go a whole lot deeper. But answers on a postcard. If anyone out there can tell me what to do. And I am frustrated as an artist. I've started one of this new approach, which is called shoals, and it's I've done a study. It would be a triptych. So the top panel is herring, and the middle panel is mackerel, and then the bottom panel is bass. And then I've done them. This is a mock-up, really, a little study with a background of the night sky. And that ties in with the fact of material transcendence. I know everything is made of stardust. And again, as an artist, I cannot take the world for granted. If you go out today and I think you said you might go try for trout later, just a 6-inch wild brownie is a miracle. It is absolutely a miracle. So whatever I do as an artist, I think I'll always feel that there's something almost as if that expression on the tip of your tongue. My imagination. If I have a stroke soon after this, it's because my brain is sort of desperately searching. And you can look at other artists. I love the work of Sam MacDonald, the Scottish sculptor, because that's a bit more mysterious, and he's got something elemental going on with his use of the materials. And then I love the wood engravings of Colin C. Paynton, which I don't know whether you know Colin's work. Magnificent, beautiful, full of swirls and patterns, and his own way of expressing himself. But you could take Sam's work and run after that, but Sam's already done that. You could take Colin's work, which a lot of people have done. So you have to. But through a process of inquiry, if you said, where would you want to be in 10 years? If you came back to me in 10 years, it would be that I'd made sense of all this other stuff that's going on. But in the meantime, I love the craft of what I'm doing, and I'm still trying in all sorts of ways to improve the portrayal of light, experimenting with colour, looking for the platonic ideal of what is a salmon or a sea trout. Because again, most of what you do as an artist, it misses by a mile. You think, I don't need to tell you, when you hook a salmon, that connection, that power, it is awesome, that overused word, and what that fish represents in terms of its life story. So as an artist, what I'm saying is it's almost a hopeless task, but you've got to you've got to try, because that's our job, to make sense of it.
Yeah. And is that part of that process you're going through then? Is that an artist is continually evolving? Does that mean that that's what you're always looking at, where you're, like you say, the pictures or the paintings that you're well known for, but you're always searching and looking as part of that evolution as an artist to continue to look and ask those questions? Is that one of the things that drives artistic people, do you think?
Definitely, because after 30 years, whatever it is, and however much you love what you do, and again, I've got a lot of friends, different backgrounds, you couldn't ever get bored of salmon, sea trout, the river, that world, I don't think, but you could get bored with the way that you've represented them. And, it is a good sort of metaphor, really. All of us as artists, you painted yourself into a corner. The way that you think, the way that you approach things, the palette that you use. So it is, it's really firing me up at the moment, the thought that there is another way forward, even though I haven't got a clue what it is. The Shoals triptych that I've mentioned. I have thought with the sea trout, and again, I don't know how to do it, the sea trout, they're so intimately linked with the upland rivers. There's this whole thing now with the Scottish rivers, as you're probably aware, and the story of the woodland and how all that's linked. That somehow you would break away from what I've always done, which is here is a view of the river. That you'd somehow, with either triptychs or just you've got unlimited choices really of what you do on the two dimensions. That you would start to bring in, the more of the rocks, the oak woodland, perhaps the ocean, because obviously these fish are the ocean, brought back up the river. So there's a lot going on in there. Whether I can make sense of it at all, but that is exciting, and if it works financially, there's been a lot of pressure, like there is for all of us in terms of making a living. But we've done really well, like I said, thanks to Facebook. So came to a mortgage late, but that's mostly sorted. So I've got this sense now that I've no excuses really not to look at this new period of do a week. It might end up being 2 weeks with what you need to do to make a living, and then perhaps 1 week where you're asking questions. You might get some print materials out. You might try some different media. Just to explore. I think the best art comes from that sense of exploration where you're asking questions, which you do initially, but then after 30 years, you've answered a lot of them, and you are repeating yourself.
Yeah.
I mean,
and do you think
in art history, you can ask too much? You clearly you will know a lot about angling art, about fishing art, about natural history art. Has anyone ever really come? What would the best mark you would give anyone for a painting of a salmon? I can't think of anything where you'd get more than a 5 out of 10, given what a salmon is, given that power when you hook one, given the story.
Yeah. Do you think the road? Sorry, David. I was just thinking what you were saying, and it was a fascinating and eloquently put, and it got me thinking about the art aspect and the subjects that you may look to explore. Do you think that would allow you to portray these emotive subjects in a different way, a slightly different way, either using the way they're painted or the medium that you might be using?
To do it in a more emotive way.
Yeah, in the sense of the damage to the rivers or whatever that may be, the fragility of the salmon and the sea trout, and to a degree as well, a large degree, the trout as well. Would that allow you to? They are emotive subjects, and you sort of touched on those, and I wondered if that may be is something in this thought process that you may want to portray in a different medium that allows you to portray that what is happening in the world right now with the state of rivers and everything else? Is that something you think about exploring as well, to show that emotion and that emotive subject in like I say, a different medium or a different way?
Yeah, absolutely. But as I've touched on, I don't know how. And also, I've discussed it with a lot of artist friends and a lot of fishermen friends, angler friends, and people have already sort of preempted it. Really, only their opinion in terms of what I'm doing as an advocate for the beauty of it all. And if I don't know, in a very crude sort of way, if you did a picture with, a representation of sewage pouring into a river and a dying fish, for one, is somebody going to put it on the wall? But you are coming to some very deep questions here, aren't you, about what art is for and what is its purpose? And as a man of the age that I am, and seeing what I've seen even within my own lifetime, I put conservationist on my tag on Instagram and on alongside angler, and I think all of us as anglers, because of what we've seen, if you've been in inland time, you have got a duty. But yeah, again, I don't have the answer. That if I did something that represented, the overfishing at sea, the dairy farms, all the issues with the dairy farms, the slurry, the poor River Wye with the increase in the poultry farms up there. Because let's face it, what we're dealing with, these are enormous issues. It's at the heart of how we all live, which is the consumer is king. So you can't blame farmers, even though they're causing absolute mayhem, because they're part. Every single one of us is a tiny link in this vast sort of interconnected web. And if you imagine, I don't know, a politician who came along and said it, how it is that we would all have to pay a lot more for our food, we'd all have to drive smaller cars, we'd all have to have less holiday, we'd all have to live a lot simpler for the world to work for the planet. They're not going to get voted in, are they? So if you give it any amount of thought, if you give it enough thought, you are left scratching your head. And you're also then, to me, looking at becoming an artist with a capital A, not a wildlife artist, because you're looking at asking these huge questions about how did we end up where, that it is the market, the economy of the market, and that let's not take any decisions. That government is best which governs least. I don't think, given the state of the environment, that there's room for that anymore. But there's complexities there again, in that looking on Facebook, and do you ever get a sense of the anti-conservationist stuff that I see from some anglers? It's mind-boggling. It truly is, in terms of it being seen as woolly-minded, when it's only through conservationist approaches that you'll get the salmon back, that you'll get the sea trout back, that you'll stop the poultry farms. But yeah, they're probably, Pete, too big for a bear of very little brain. So yeah. I'll probably carry on painting nice fish and hoping, that I might get someone to think, wow, that, these really are beautiful creatures, and we should do something to nice. Protect them.
Nice. I like that. And, I told you we'd go down wormholes and things like that. And it's just, like I say, it's really important to me for my guests to get that backstory of their thought process and everything. And it's been wonderful for you to answer that as well, which I've really, really enjoyed. But let's go somewhere else. I remember my friend Nick said he bumped into you. I think you were floating down the Nadder in Wiltshire a few years back, and you said that you'd be out back on the reefs and everything else locally. that must be a really cool thing to do, and takes you inside your the fish's world, I guess, to get a good look. How do you use that to put a picture together? Are you sort of exploring their environment, creating a frame? Are you photographing? I just wondered why you're doing it, and how it's so important to the process of your artwork as well.
It's at the heart of it, Pete. It is. I've said quite often, it's almost become a catchphrase, but I was obsessed with probably, again, like a lot of your listeners, obsessed with fish in the world from the age of 10. Whatever it is, I couldn't, again, answer that question, but catching stickerbacks with a net, that was it. I was off and running. So what I've said, this catchphrase, is what my life has been like to a large degree. All the fieldwork, it's been like swimming back into my childhood imagination. So as a youngster, growing up in Oldham, not the most promising starting point from the view of an angler. You've got mill lodges, you've got little farm ponds, the odd bigger reservoir, post-industrial canals, most of them very coloured, turbid water. But almost from the earliest days of me angling, I remember having this picture of what went on under the surface, partly informed by Mr. Crabtree. I don't even know the wonderful illustration by Bernard Venables. So I would be imagining, even though I was fishing a farm pond, the colour of drinking chocolate, basically, I would be imagining my worm sort of tumbling through the water. If you've got lilies, thinking of the fish moving through. And probably like all artists, developed a really strong picture in my mind's eye of what might be happening beneath the surface. So at college, it's amazing really, if this would be 18 after a year of foundation, probably 19, studying wildlife art in Carmarthen. One of the lecturers, a man who really didn't suffer fools, and he tore a strip off me for copying the work of other people, like the wonderful illustrator Mick Lotz, amongst others. And he said, get yourself a mask and snorkel, get in there. He said, find it yourself. And he also helped me to build a glass-bottom boat, which we took on an oxbow lake of the River Towie. Wonderful place called Bishop's Pool, which had tench and pike in. And I spent a wonderful summer, probably when I should have been doing other things, drifting around with this window. We made it like a cowboy's wagon with hoops and canvas, dark canvas. So your only light source was this glass bottom. And it was, I was bewitched and enchanted, all of these words, by what the reality was after years of imagining it. Watching, you could see the tench drifting through the lilies, the quality of light, a particular quality of ever-shifting light that you get if the surface is rippled. You've got the light being broken up into these strips, and then it creates the sparkle. And it's still in a way that I couldn't explain. I know a lot of divers now as well, and free divers. It isn't just me. There's an awful lot of people whose happy place is underwater. So that whole process, starting off with Nick Fox, this lecturer who'd set me off. The first time I snorkeled the Gwilly, I think I probably on the same day went into Carmarthen, picked up this cheap mask and snorkel, went off to the River Gwilly, found the first deep pool that I could. No wetsuit, I was hard in those days, so just a pair of trunks. And just the freedom. I know it's a big thing now. I've been doing it for 35 years, the free swimming. So just to be in a pair of trunks in the river. But then I got more confident. There was some deep, dark holes in this pool on the Gwilly. Swam down into the depths, and as my eyes adjusted to the dark, there was a half a dozen big sea trout stacked up like I've seen it 1,000 times since in this. There's like a lot of, almost like caves really, where the power of the water has sculpted out a softer bit of rock. And this is where the sea trout, I could not believe my eyes. I mean, it's a sea trout river, the sea trout lived there, but it really was It was magic, and it still is. What I'll be doing. I'm watching the river levels now, and they come into a nice level. I've never been in my favourite pools in the Cothie, as long as it's from May onwards, and not seen sea trout. So all of that is at the heart of the work. And even though I've got 190,000 images on in my Lightroom catalogue, a lot of them underwater, it's still that sense of connection, something about the power of the environment and a link with it that informs the work. So you can go through all your reference, you can feel that you've got nothing to say, nothing to paint, and then you go and have a dive or a snorkel, and it's like some petrol on the fire, and you're off and running again. And some of it's really simple. I know we've talked about more complex things, about a deeper side to it all, but some of it, as an artist, for me, I loved realistic painting when I was a child, and it is just a case of look at this. It is the detail that I love. The detail on the stones, the habitat, the water surface, the scales on the fish. It's a very simple way of me, in a way that artists can't help themselves, and the same with writers and poets. And again, it's not clearly all artists, writers, creators. There is an ego involved, but it's not about look at me. It is about look at this. The first pike that I caught, to my shame now, I killed it again, not out of some wanton cruelty, because I wanted to show everybody like this was a water that we could walk to. So these poor anyone I met on the way home from this mill lodge, I was like, look at this! This old woman stood at the bus stop. Look at this pike. So there's still a simple soul involved who loves the world, can't ever take it for granted, and wants to share that with people. To say, look at this. So yeah, back to your question. That's where it all comes from, and I do love work of all sorts, all different styles and mediums. But with fish, I do love it when you get the scale counts right, when you get the fin ray counts right. A lot of people have said kind things about my work, really kind, with regards to the fish looking like whatever species it is. But that just ties in with all the hours spent underwater, and all the close-ups of. If I'm painting salmon, within Lightroom, you've got a subsection. So you've got salmon, but then you've got dorsal fin, pectoral fin, caudal fin, scale detail, eye detail, mouth, etc. But for me, part of that attention to detail is doing doing justice to the creatures. Definitely.
Lovely, and it shines through in your artwork as well. That you can see that it's absolutely beautiful. Was it always? It sounds as though you're always destined that art was the direction that your life was going to take, and it sounds as though at college or uni, art school, that fish were on the radar very early. Was that always the route that your life was going to take, so that fish and painting were so closely intertwined?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, from, again, my earliest memories, I was always copying pictures out of my angling books. As soon as I started to collect, again, like most anglers, very quickly started to fill up shelves with angling books. So would sit, even at 12 years old, copying the Rod Sutterby illustrations in the Fisherman's Handbook, and a wonderful book. Can't remember the title of the book, but it's got a picture of, I think it was either Arthur Oglesby or Reg Regini fishing for grayling on one of the northern rivers. and it's a wonderful snowy landscape. There's still paint in a lot of these books. You can still, so looking at what illustrators have done and trying to copy them. So from an early age, I had experience early on. My mum was definitely of the opinion that if you wanted to go fishing, asking her for money for a pint of maggots at the weekend or more floats, she was very much of the opinion, which I really admire now. If you want, that stuff, you've got to work. So I had any number of jobs as a youngster, starting with a paper round and then the local supermarket and local factories in the summer. So it's a combination of absolutely loving the fish, loving the drawing, being a real admirer of all the artists that I came to know through all the books that I had, but also hating that sense that employment in somewhere where you really don't want to be. When I worked in factories and you started at 8 o'clock and the clock hand seemed to be set in concrete, and you literally could not believe your eyes. You'd be thinking, well, it must be nearly lunchtime now, and it was like 8:30. You'd been there. I don't know whether you've ever had that sort of job. And it's a mixture of really good positive motivation that I really wanted to do something, with the love and the obsession, really, the passion that was developing, but also sort of abject terror that I would end up. I worked in a plastics factory with a lovely bunch of blokes that got on tremendously well, where it was extruding plastic for the UPVC windows. And I don't know to this day how these guys did that. 7 days a week it was. I don't know whether the things have changed over 35 years. So that was a massive incentive for me to really work hard at trying to find a way of making a living that wouldn't involve that feeling of death by 1,000 hours in an 8-hour day, because it just felt like it would never end. But the main motivation was really wanting to make sense of this passion and try and get some understanding of it, and to illustrate books. The probably with hubris, really. When you were fishing as often as I did, another part of the story was, however good the illustrations were, if you look at the very best, and I can see now that none of us as artists can really compete with the natural world, but as a youngster, there was a feeling of I could do better than that. Like if you'd been out and caught a dozen roach, and then you open your favourite, even your very favourite artist, they weren't coming close to what a roach truly is, and I haven't either. I'm not. With for all the right reasons, you're genuinely humble about anything that I've done as set against the wonder of the fish themselves.
Yeah, and so your life.
What you originally asked, Pete. Sorry.
Well, no, that's wonderful. That's what we want. It's about you and the story and the path that your life has taken. It brings us nicely along to the, from the factory, you obviously made the leap towards art as a career. And how was that from the beginning? And how did that feel when that first painting sold? How was that for you, and how special was that for you? And did it take time in that process to get that first sale?
No, partly because of the way that I work. I think forever, as long as we're around as a species, people, and again going back millennia, if you look at the wonderful Saxon jewelry that has been discovered, if you look back to the ancient Egyptians, people love detail. Because I've had an eye for detail, I can tell you that the very first picture I saw, Mrs. Dean, our biology teacher, and I don't know, it's within school, I don't know, it's the same for other artists, word gets round that Miller's a good painter, and somehow anyway, I don't know whether the art teacher was a real mentor, really looked after me, really got me into oil painting, Mr. Hughes. And anyway, Miss Mrs. Dean got to see, I can't remember, Miss or Mrs. Dean got to see this this painting of a nightingale, very, very detailed within some brambles, just copied from a photograph. And she said, I'd like to buy that. And I honestly, it's like walking. I think it's either, this is going back probably 40 years now. It's either $5 or a tenner. But again, your sense of reward for that, which you'd done as a labour of love, as against any amount of money you'd earned from being in a plastics factory, was well, that came later actually, but a paper round or the supermarket job, it really did help. And then very quickly after that, my first serious serious, you're 15, but my first regular girlfriend, Gillian, her dad Colin bought her. Again, that was actually copied in an illustration, but the same thing. It was the detail, because I had that attention to detail. Colin gave me a tenner for this tawny owl, and then word, even within school, word got around. So people. So I think I've already touched on it. I've never had trouble selling my work. What I've had trouble with is making a living wage out of it, which is true and has been forever. You probably know about Vermeer, one of the best artists to me that's ever been. The story with Vermeer, he died of a broken heart, age 43, because he couldn't support his family. Rembrandt going. I'm not comparing myself with these artists. I'm just saying that if you're going into art, you should know from early on that it's not necessarily going to be the best way. So yeah, selling pictures has never been an issue, but making a profit from it, not a profit, a living wage. That's taken me 30 years to sort out.
Yeah, and that's where our paths must have first crossed. There was this new thing called the internet. And I think a friend phoned me and said, you need to have a look at this guy's website. And yeah, that must be 25 years ago, something like that. I would think it must be.
So. I would think so, because I still remember that, because my wife, Lisa, is my business partner. And definitely in the Wallace and Gromit sort of scenario, Lisa's the Gromit, the one with the brains, who's actually making all the right decisions, whereas Wallace here sort of fumbles his way, doing the best he can. But Lisa, with everything, with the internet, with Facebook, with social media, with doing prints, getting our own printer, has been the driving force. So very early on, she said, we're going to have to get a computer and we're going to have to get a website. And I was arms folded, saying this is ridiculous. And then we got this email. There's no shop then. It was just an email from a Mr. Pete Tigers. I think you bought like 5 or 6 paintings. And I was astonished, genuinely astonished. And we've never really look back, and I've got a lot to thank Lisa for in terms of that side of the businesses. We now have an online shop. We sell a lot of prints again, which has really helped this business of making a living. In a typical year now, I would probably survive even if I didn't sell an original. And again, I've got Lisa's encouragement to try and explore some of these other avenues. But yeah, your name will live with me forever.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I can tell you as an end user, I remember seeing the website. I loved it, and I was thinking while we were talking about art from, let's say, the 18th and early 19th century, a lot of fish pictures were sort of like fruit studies, that they were on a table dead amongst other stuff. Whereas I saw your website and these were beautiful paintings, but of the fish, I could see the fish I saw and loved, and you'd captured them so perfectly. And I'd not really seen that before. And that's why to me, it was, and I'm sure subsequently and before me and many others after me as well, thought, wow, this guy has captured the fish I love in their environment. They're not dead on a table somewhere. And it was, to me, just something new and really, really different. And that's why I like them so much. And that's why I bought them.
Well, thank you. It was again. We were not to do the sort of like the Monty Python sketch about how poor we were, but we weren't quite sort of living out of a shoe and eating coal, but but we were always struggling, always maxed out on the credit cards, living off the overdraft. So that was a big thing for us, and it is much appreciated. You know what you've said, and I can't say that I had a real plan. I can put that there within retrospect, retrospectively. But it was just to try and make sense. Like I was saying, this process of inquiry, these images that swam around in my mind's eye whenever I was fishing. And then as soon as, Nick Fox's behest, I started to get in the rivers, and then that all came alive and very, very much trying to make sense. And what you find is, I think probably most writers, poets, again, any creators find that your dreams are shared by lots of others, and that's been a wonderful part of what I do. In recent years, I've done the majority of my fishing that I still do has been from a little Zodiac rib that I've got, and I've been fishing off the reefs of Pembrokeshire, which are truly wild, dramatic, and dangerous places. Sort of 5-knot currents with big waves, even with no swell. If you're on a big tide, like screaming over these pinnacles, and you can't dive these places. It's too dangerous. But on the echo sounder, you quite often see all the bait fish stacked up at the top of the pinnacles, and then you'll see the bass and pollock. You can see the big signals. So I've had some of the best days of my life, really. You don't know whether you've fished a drift from a boat, but you're basically doing a drift over the feature and then back up and round. So drift after drift, with the sounder bouncing with fish, with big, big for Pembrokeshire, big pollock, good bass coming to the boat, string after string of mackerel. And a sense of profound connection then with the environment. So I've done paintings with only the last couple of years with the pinnacles and the bass. I'm fairly certain they use the pinnacles for ambush. They can't really catch a mackerel in open water, so they've got to hang off the pinnacle and use that element of surprise. And there's two paintings, but one in particular, I think it's called The Chase, and it's a bass chasing some mackerel around a pinnacle. It's sold like nothing I've ever done, because you are connecting everybody else who's ever fished those pinnacles, everybody else who's ever seen it on the sounder. A lot of anglers, obviously it's not for me, a lot of anglers live bait with mackerel. And it's really, really special for me, because I didn't know when I did that painting. I didn't know what I was doing other than exploring this feeling that had built up over the 4 years I've been fishing these reefs. And I honestly didn't know it was just another painting other than that you're trying. And it just went, from our point of view, in terms of how well prints sell. And that's what you're looking for, is that sense of connection, that link with other people's imagination. That because sometimes as an artist you are sort of whistling in the dark, and you do miss as well, like the whole ideas, a bunch of ideas I've got moving forward with the tie in something more mysterious, or the environment, or the thing with the triptych and the material transcendence. Like, so far, the one I've done with the shoals, people are just like, whatever. That's you can't always hit, can you? As a creative, But when it does work and you connect, there's one salmon one I've done. I think it's called just Atlantic salmon, and it's only like any number of other salmon. It's just a salmon with another fish in the background, with the I think it's either the Cothy or the Souther, with the environment that I love. And again, that has it's almost sold out now. I think I've got about two prints left in the edition, and that really makes sense of all that you do, is when people get it. And again, genuinely, nothing to do with your ego, how clever you are, but how you've managed to portray what that world means to you, and then it clearly means an awful lot to other people too. So there's a sense of connection, of real connection with other people, which is, it's getting right to me what the heart of being human is to feel that closeness, definitely.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you used the word ego a couple of times, and I watched some football yesterday, and amazing game, Liverpool, Man City, absolutely fantastic. Those guys and ladies previously as well, to stand out in front of a crowd and do the things they do takes one form of an ego. Yet, as creatives, do you think the ego is slightly different in the sense of it's slightly more fragile? In the sense of, if a painting, let's say, or a piece of writing or a photo isn't received in quite the same way, do you think there's a different form of it within there with creatives, from an ego that you need to put the artwork out there and share it and create that connection, but there's also the fragility that if it doesn't connect, that can affect in different ways too?
Oh, definitely. And I think I can only speak from my own perspective and experience, that fragility as a younger man, and again, I know a lot of artists, and for the vast majority, it is close to, if not debilitating, because of how fragile you are. And also, you sort of learn, most artists, and again, I speak a lot about this with friends, you need a sense of your own importance above what it really is when you're a younger artist to keep going. You need to really think that the world needs some Millers, even though it doesn't, because that's going to carry you through the overdraft. But yeah, it is very fragile. But when you're older and wiser, you realise how small your work is in the scheme of things, and it almost seems incredible when you look at, where do you want to start? Velasquez, Caravaggio, Rembrandt. I've been looking at Rubens a lot recently. It's ridiculous that most contemporary artists, given what I honestly think we've done compared with the greats of the past, that we treat it all so seriously. But without that, it does drive the work. It does. It is important, definitely, because you have to have a sense that what you want to say, and that your own connection is important, because otherwise you wouldn't be anyone who's writing, presumably, especially if you're trying to get it published, you must feel that you've got something to say. I'm a great lover of Ted Hughes. Wonderful poem. If you don't know it, I'll send it to you afterwards. After Moonless Midnight, it moves me to tears even years after knowing the poem and reading it every time I read it. But I've just read a biography. I'm far less enamoured of him as a man. Shocking. I've heard people say the same about Hugh Falkers. Doesn't, to me, judge the art, not the artist, but a shocking life story in all sorts of ways with how he treated people. But still, what the point I'm getting to is he's got a wonderful book for any writers, not just poets, called Poetry in the Making. It's the best thing I've read in terms of connecting with your own imagination, and I'd recommend it to any creative, whether you're a writer, a poet, a painter. But he says pretty much that you have to feel that you've got something to confess as a writer, or otherwise don't do it. And he also says that the part of the process is like learning to fish. And he uses the metaphor of the ideas being like fish within the pond of your mind, and you have to learn how to catch them. And I love that. But yeah, Poetry in the Making, it's called. It's only a slim volume, but really, I think it was written with school children in mind. But it's the book that's been well thumbed.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The ego learns your relative importance in the place of things, and you can end up laughing then at your younger self.
Interesting points there, and I wanted to just go one more step on before we move on. And I've spoken to writers on here and brought up a point that I don't write for our magazine, but I put something on Facebook if I've got something to say as an outflow for me to be able to do that. But I find mood affects my creativity, and I find if I'm in a downswing of mood, I feel more creative. Do you have anything that you detect that when you're starting a painting, do you have to be in a particular mood? Do you have to be feeling a particular way for it to go? And do you, when you put those first sparks down, do you have a sense of how that painting's going to turn out as well?
A lot of interesting questions there. I have suffered quite bad depression at times, and I don't know whether anyone else. It'd be interesting actually to put my work before a panel of anglers, art lovers, interested parties really who are interested in creativity. I'm convinced that I had a particularly difficult period. I think, like I've seen with a lot of people in my 40s, a genuine sort of midlife, really struggled, and I think I've got a period of depressed fish. You can see my depression, a lack of energy. I'm using an awful lot of techniques these days, meditation, mindfulness, reading a lot. But my energy generally is sort of cycled between depression and anxiety. And from a creative point of view, give me the anxiety any day, because that's like a vibration. And the best work, you sort of take in that energy. And it's a perfect sort of. I've used the metaphor before, or the simile. It's like alchemy. So you're taking something potentially negative and destructive, and you're turning it into something creative and beautiful and positive, and also like this. Again, the metaphor with depression is darkness, and what people say really kindly about my work is how full of light it is. And again, sort of retrospectively, really, I think a lot of my work has been trying to make something good. And again, it's something Ted Hughes is really, really, he thinks it's at the heart of creativity is pain, and that it's coming from some sense of struggle. But you are then turning it into something filled with light, and turning when you said about that energy at the beginning of a painting, you've got to give it some love. There's a lot of time in some of the big pieces, many, many, many days, and there's the best work, you do keep your energy on the right side of things. And again, if you ask me, If you ask me as a 25-year-old about painting, I'd be saying it's whether it's canvas or board, or whether you've got a smooth canvas, or whether you're using glazes, or it's what your palette is all about, or whether you're underpainting. It would all be about the technique. That's just not forget it. You need some technique, but it's all about the mind and what you're able to bring to it, and the energy that you're able to bring to it. So that the best, one of the top skills, I would say, as a 55-year-old artist is managing your mind and trying to keep on the right side of negativity, definitely, and to try to stop any doubts creeping in. But I don't know whether you'll be looking afterwards for depressed fish, but I think there are some millers out there. There have been times where there's been a dichotomy. Really, there's been this really troubled soul trying to paint, a beautiful. I think at times I would have been better doing more of an Edward Munch or a Jackson Pollock type. I think I should have. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Definitely, I should have gone down that road. But like I said, that I still, I am a sensitive soul, and again, given the state of the world in all sorts of respects, I think I'd argue that it makes sense for anybody intelligent to be a little troubled. But that anxiety then is an energy, and if you recognise that energy, you can convert it into something attractive, and you're making use of something then which is potentially destructive, and you're turning a negative into a positive. Definitely.
Yeah. I like that a lot, and I'm exactly the same. I think I was saying to John, our designer for the magazine, that I use it as an energy.
Yeah.
So if you do feel a little anxious about, I use it, and that's what drives me, and that's what fuels me. And like you say, I think as you get older, you realize it and you manage those things.
Yeah.
And I use it as a positive. But let's move on a little bit now. And I just wanted to talk to you about. I often say how photogenic fish are and how beautiful they are. What, in your opinion, and you've probably aren't many fish that you haven't painted, do you have a fish that you feel is probably the most photogenic that you've painted?
Yeah, I couldn't pick one. I really couldn't. And one of the most difficult fish as an artist to capture, and again, not just from my perspective, from the whole history of people painting fish. And again, you'll know this more than most, and presumably a lot of your listeners will. A fresh run salmon, where I used to live, was in Carmarthenshire, close to a tiny little gem of a river called the Tav. Now, that's not the Tav, the Cardiff Tav, which is where the name Taffy comes from. It's just TAF. Only a short river comes into the estuary. There's the Three Rivers estuary: the Gwendraeth, Fark, the Towery, and the Tav. And I was lucky enough, and again, I probably don't need to tell any salmon fishermen out there, for two seasons, I couldn't work. I'd got the salmon bug, and I'm near where the river. I don't know. I think it was about 7 minutes to where I parked the car. So I'd have I had a tide clock on the wall, and if I turned my phone on, like your favourites, was Tav river levels. So a combination of watching the river levels, watching the tides. Back to your original question, I did catch a couple of salmon which had just come in, and they're like supernatural creatures. That when you've got that glow, and it looks like I don't know whether you know what I mean, like they're animating. light from
emanating.
within. Yeah. Like this, almost this aura, like there's an aura about them. And they've literally you've just come in off the tide. They've got sea lice on, and I've tried to paint freshwater salmon, although there's difficulties involved with me putting them in the water because that affects them, so it's not quite like a salmon in hand. But I haven't seen much to match those fish. Although as soon as I said that, all the mackerel and bass fishing that I've been doing, if you get video, which I've been doing, I've been photographing and videoing mackerel. The only way I can do it really is with a friend who's got them on the feathers, because I've tried to chase bait balls and they just disappear. So you've got to, and these fish, in a way that I think probably again nobody could tell you, probably hasn't been studied, but the mackerel are pulsing in the way that I've seen video of the sailfish do. So you've got the brightest green, brighter than anything the paint pigments that should have a warning on, like especially for beginners, handle with care. You mix up like a phthalocyanin green, or it pulses green, purple, electric blue, and then if it changes the angle, silver. And watching some of the snippets of video that I've got, I end up laughing because as an artist, again, you're not wasting your time. Again, the response that I've had, the lovely things that people have said, but again, I would defy anyone, even looking back at the old masters, because a bit like I've said with the fresh run salmon, there's almost something. It's not supernatural. It is nature. It is natural, but there is something that seems almost beyond, just beyond. So yeah, mackerel, salmon, but even a fresh run, not a fresh run, a young bass especially. Some of them have this silver, the quality of the silver, and then there's others which are shot through if you catch them from kelp. So they've got the silver, but then it goes into blues and golds and umbers. And again, in light underwater, you're just getting, sometimes all the colours of the rainbow, especially if you've got the flickering light from the surface. So you'll have the silver shot through with these other colours, and then you've got the rippling light, which is split. On some of my recent stuff, I've been worried about whether I've pushed it too far, but I don't think you could really. In terms of, well, let's go for it then. Let's get a Windsor violet. Let's get a phthalocyanin blue, and just pretty much put it straight on the canvas. But I mean, I could probably go on an hour really. Brown trout. I learnt to fly fish on a tiny little northern river called the River Tame, which is a tributary of the Mersey, and it comes off the moors. And it's a sort of river where you catch half a dozen brownies for a pound. And most of them are 2 and 3 ounce fish. If you catch a pounder, it's a monster. But those fish with the red spots, and some of them even beyond par stage. I don't know whether other rivers are the same. So I've seemed to keep some element of the par markings even as they mature fish. So you've got the umbers and the greens again of the back, shot through with the violets again of what would have been the par markings, and then you get the black spots and then the red spots, scarlet spots, fringed with what can be white, but can also again look like there's a wonderful pigment called King's Blue. A lot of artists love it. It goes well in all mixes, but you can get this violet stroke King's Blue halo. And again, it's like, I wouldn't say I'm religious, but certainly spiritual. Who on earth has come up with that? Like it just looks like some absolutely superb designer has thought, you know what, we'll put these spots on, and then we'll just finish him off with this with this ring, and then the gold that runs through the head, and again how it changes in the light, looking like some sort of precious metal. Pike, I could go on. So yeah, I couldn't possibly pick one. And one thing I haven't lost, I've lost sometimes my excitement, basically because of not knowing what to do in the studio, how to make sense of probably the deepening emotions as I age, and in terms of genuine sadness of what we seem to be doing with the species. But if I saw a fresh run salmon today, it would still be like it just sort of feels like your brain is lifting in your skull. This is the irony, actually, of the conservation stroke angling. It's almost only anglers who get this. I don't think you could get anyone other than an angler to wax lyrical about a fresh run salmon, because nobody else catches them, feels the power, feels that connection, holds them in the hand, and then ironically puts them back and sends them on the way with the best wishes. I do that with I don't eat any sea fish now. I know there's an argument then that perhaps I shouldn't catch them, but because of how bad the oceans are, I read a lot about conservation. There's a wonderful book by Professor Callum Roberts on the unnatural history of our seas. So all the fish, all the sea fish that I catch, I do release them and send them on the way with my apologies.
It's lovely though. What you've said is, and I know people listening to this will say that all of these wild fish that we're lucky enough to catch, they're all beautiful. Everyone is different. And I think at the very beginning you said, it doesn't matter about the size. I always try, no matter what fish, if it's a 5-inch brown trout from a stream here in Devon, I look at it and marvel at the beauty of that fish, no matter what. And like you say with salmon, when you were describing them, and I always think that lit up is the word I can best describe those fresh fish and are absolutely stunning. And I think we're extremely lucky. This a word that seems to be coming through this podcast a lot, and connection on so many levels. And yes, particularly with salmon, but all of these fish, if we're lucky enough to catch them, that connection with that fish is that we're extremely lucky to have it, I think, as anglers. And as I often say to a non-angler, if I had to explain it, you wouldn't understand it. And it still rings true with me to this day. But, 30 years in, it feels to me, and from what I see, I obviously follow your social media closely, that you're at the peak of your powers. You're still looking to evolve, and it's a silly question, I guess, but you're enjoying it as much as ever, I guess, that by the way that you're looking at things. I guess that's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, the enjoyment, it is tinged by the fact that, as I've touched, I am a worrier, and I am a perfectionist, and I mean this really sincerely. I can only just work as an artist because of how good I want things to be, as against the reality. So again, emotional maturity, emotional intelligence comes into this. That you can't ever bring the painting alive in the way that you would like to. So even when I'd finished the chase, which everyone's gone on to love, and a lot of people think it's my best work, when I finished it, because there's this link with the real world and that connection and the I don't know, again, the brain lifting in the skull of when you hook a fresh run salmon, or you hook a 6-pound bass in a 5-knot current, and you think your boat might be about to swept onto the rocks, all that drama. It is enjoyment, but tinged with a worrier's worry. But again, speaking to a lot of people over many years, I think without that side to your character, if you were like, that'll do, I think it's sort of like a salmon, and with it, without on species like the bass, I think it's like 18,000 photographs of bass. So that neurotic side, it does inhibit the enjoyment, but the almost after the event, the sense of satisfaction of connection, the fact that people do get it and do understand it, because I think at the heart of yourself as a writer and almost anybody who's writing or creating, that is what you want. It is that sense of connection, and I feel blessed to to be able to make my living doing that, and I did all sorts of part-time jobs, but well over 20 years now, I've done nothing but paint, and I feel very lucky, and I am lucky, really lucky again, to be married to a fellow artist, because Lisa will make no one's about it. She'll tell me if it is a dog's dinner, but she's also will really encourage me that something's working. I mean, it's not a false humility. I'm old enough and wise enough to know that what I do is okay, and I know I'm trying my best. But the first macro one I did, a lovely guy, at least from Facebook, David Edwards, I think he's called. He's a charter skipper. I think he's from Wales, but he works on the west coast of Ireland now. And I just telling it as it is, I'd started this macro piece from when I really started to get to grips with the reference. So I had these incredible photographs of macro, and I'd started roughing this picture in. Again, this feeling, I don't know what I'm doing, and I can't possibly get it like the reference, and really worried. And I posted it on Facebook and went to make a cuppa. And when I came back after however long it takes you to make a cup of tea, it had gone absolutely bonkers on Facebook. So that is wonderful, because you know that you're not wasting your time, but you also know that lots of other people do appreciate macro. They do understand the beauty of them, and they do get where you're coming from. And not long after that, I think David put his name on the picture, and every other mackerel one. Because again, I am to some extent with species like mackerel. They've been part of art and design forever, but almost always as the stylized printmaker's sort of show or the still life on the plate. So trying to bring them alive as if they're a living, breathing shoal. And they're not a big game fish. They are what they are, but it's been really, really, really gratifying to see that again, as keeps happening, as with you all those years ago, that your imagination has met. I think you're creating a starting point with a painting for somebody else to bring their own imagination to it, and when it works, it's the best job in the world when it works. I think that's fair to say. Not the best paid job, but the best job, definitely.
Oh, fantastic. And well, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure many of the people listening, that you've done a fabulous job of it, and long may that continue. David, we're coming up for almost an hour and a half now, and there's so much more I want to talk to you about, but I wanted to thank you for talking with me so candidly, so openly about stuff today. If people, and I'm sure there's not many listening to this, who haven't found you, how can they find you and how can they connect with you?
The best starting point is the website, which is, I mean, if you just Google David Miller, it's all the W's, davidmillerart.co.uk. And then it's David Miller Art on both Facebook and Instagram. But yeah, all the details there. But no, thanks very much, Pete, for taking the time. I did warn you that you'd struggle. struggle to shut me up. I live with and work with Lisa, who is the strong, silent type, who hardly says a word. So when I get the chance to speak, as you've seen, I'm off and running.
Well, you've said so much that has made sense, and your passion and love for our quarry has come through loud and clear. So, David Miller, it's been brilliant having you on the Fly Culture podcast today. Thanks so much for talking with me today.
It's been a pleasure, Peter. A real pleasure. Lovely to catch up, and you take care, and tight lines if you do get out for that Granham hatch.
I'm going to try my utmost. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to the Fly Culture podcast today. I hope you've enjoyed this one. And as ever, there will be plenty more along the line. Thanks for listening.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.